Hey, welcome back to Trucking with Tammy, everybody. Happy New Year. It's January 2026, and we are hitting the road running. Today marks the launch of my new series, Training Tuesday, and we are kicking it off with the foundation of everything, health and wellness on the road. So, whether you're a brand new driver, just getting your CDL, all wide eyed and ready to roll, or a veteran who's logged millions of miles and feels every single one of them, this series is for you. So let's be real. Trucking is tough on your body. Studies show that truck drivers face some of the highest rates of obesity in any occupation. And if you look around at the truck stops, you'll see that's true. Around 70% of drivers. Drivers are also at a higher risk for diabetes, heart issues, chronic back pain, and an average life expectancy that's shorter than most folks. But here's the truth, guys. It doesn't have to be that way, right? So this year, we're going to change the game. We're going to prepare new drivers that are entering our industry to set up habits that will give them a long, strong career. We hope. Limit the burnout, limit the bodies breaking down early. And you veterans, hey guys, I'm talking to you. It's time to get up off your rear. Literally, get off that rear. Shake off that stiffness and let's reclaim your energy, okay? So, to help us kick this off right, I've got an incredible guest who's living proof that massive change is possible even while hauling freight. And if you're in the trucking industry, this man needs no introduction. But Michael Anthony Lombard is a U.S. Marine veteran, owner-operator trucker, Ironman triathlete, fitness coach, and the host of the Lombard Trucking Show. He went from struggling with his weight on the road to completing full Ironman races, a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a marathon all in one day. Now, he coaches drivers just like you on how to build real strength and endurance without ever needing a gym. So, Michael, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us on day one of Training Tuesday.
Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. I truly appreciate it. That was a lot of momentum building up, and I am super stoked to be here.
I am so glad that you were able to join us, Michael. With your experience and what you went through, I thought you were the perfect person to help me kick off this health and wellness journey.
No, I can't appreciate that compliment enough. It's definitely something I'm very passionate about. I've said this before on my own show as well as to other people. There's something, it kind of just lives in my heart. It's a calling I have, not only just to genuinely help people, but help people in this specific way, because I believe that this industry, especially, I believe it's the most vulnerable when it comes to issues, with health and wellness. I think large in part, this is a national issue. We see this, the idea of health, overall health, fitness, and overall wellness has really come into the mainstream these past few years. It has, but yet there's still not a lot of light shining on this, on the issue specifically within the trucking industry. And I believe that if the trucking industry can start to thrive in this area, then it will trickle down into the rest of the country in such a phenomenal way. And there's been great wins along the way with, colleagues I've worked with, like guys like Dr. Mark Manera and Jeremy Raymer and the Project 61 team. And that's why I won't stop talking about it. So I'm stoked to be here today.
Well, you're not just talking about it, you lived it. This is something that was a personal journey for you as well.
That's exactly right. I definitely wouldn't be talking about this if it wasn't a lived experience myself and didn't see the ROI on it. Like there has been, like, going through a weight loss transformation, like the one I have, which is over the course of several years, is something that, it transformed my physical body and my physical health, but what it also did for my mental health, put me in a position to want to give back, want to be involved, want to talk on this issue. Because as I lived through this experience, for as hard and as difficult as it was to build and learn and get into these new habits, the ROI there, the return on investment, has just paid off in dividends with relationships I've built, building better relationships with ones I've had, my overall mental health, wellness, reduction in anxiety, depression. Like there's been such a trickle down effect to living, like, living and walking through this testimony that has made me now want to go. And, there's this old saying, and this is something I've heard, is, you work very hard to climb up to the top of a mountain. Once you get to the top of that mountain, you kind of become responsible to go back down and take other people up to the top too, because that view is so good. That view is so good at the top of the mountain. And and I wouldn't say I'm at the very, very top, but I'm a lot higher than what I was, back in 2018. And I got to, I'm at this high peak right now, and it looks so good, and I feel so good. I feel compelled to go back down and bring people up to the top with me so that they can see it too, just to know how good it can be.
So those people down at the mountain, those are going to be our future drivers. So a lot of those newbies out there don't know who Michael Anthony Lombard is. They don't know the Lombard story. Would you like to share your story with all the new people looking to get into the industry, or the people in the industry that might not be familiar with who you are?
Absolutely, because aside from living through the testimony, like I had said, I don't exist without the Lombard story in general, without my family story. I'm not in this industry without it too, because that's what called me, to work in this industry, and it has everything to do with my last name being Lombard. My family owned a motor carrier called Lombard Brothers Incorporated, which was known as Lombard Trucking. This was started by my great grandfather Nicky and his brother John. And this is back in the early 1900s. They had 8 horses, 2 carriages. They incorporated as a motor carrier in 1923. And for the majority of the 20th century, they became one of the largest motor carriers east of the Mississippi. They had, terminals from Baltimore to Maine. They're a very large enterprise. My grandfather, and this is what I'm most proud of, because I grew up with this, who I consider my hero for a good chunk of my life. He was an owner, he was a part owner of Lombard, and his primary job as owner of Lombard Trucking was driver. That's what he did for 30 plus years. Lombard eventually sold in 1984 to North Penn Transfor, largely in part to the 1980 Motor Carrier Act, which is known as deregulation. For anybody who doesn't know, or new drivers, that was a piece of legislation that essentially opened up the market. Overall, it gutted the Teamsters Union, of which Lombard Trucking was an affiliate of, because it eliminated the ICC. So it had eliminated freight rates and minimums, and kind of opened up the market for essentially anybody to get a motor carrier authority. And so it became very hyper competitive. And with companies like my family's company that had great wages and pensions and benefits, they were no longer able to kind of compete, and they limped on for several years. They sold to North Penn Transfer in 84. North Penn ended up folding due to union contract negotiations in 1991. But again, I grew up with my grandfather, and I've always known him as the truck driver. One generation separated from him. My father owns a small parts manufacturer in Connecticut, and so I've grown up in a blue collar household, and with that kind of mentality. Now, where I kind of come into the story, where I kind of blend into it, myself, I grew up. I went to high school in Waterbury, which was the headquarters of Lombard, where HQ was. There's a strip mall there today, still called Lombard Plaza, right off of I-84. I served in the Marine Corps from 2008 to 2012. I deployed to Afghanistan in 2010 with my unit, Charlie Battery 110. I got out of the Marines in 2012. When I had gotten out, I went to school because with the GI Bill, and still not really having that much of a direction, which that's a whole other podcast episode in itself, just talking about veteran transition into the civilian world. But I'd gone to school. I finished school in 2016. And that's when really I'd say things started to spiral, because at this point, college was somewhat of a Band-Aid from coming out of the Marine Corps, because I was involved with the club lacrosse team, and it was still in this different type of environment where you're with people a lot. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden it was gone. I'm in the real world. I worked for a year and a half at Enterprise Rent-A-Car, working in customer service and sales. And it just and it was, it's rough. Anybody who's done time with the green machine, I mean, it's a tough job. Half your customers are drug dealers. The other half have just gotten into a car accident. So it's like, you're not working with the happiest of clients. It's almost like, you're working in a people pleasing role, and you'll never please the people. So it just, kind of ran me down, felt very purposeless for a while. and this is also where health issues started to arise. I gained an incredible amount of weight. Was definitely drinking excessively. I had no good exercise habits. Nothing really good at all that was going on, especially in the health space, because it was just like living for the weekend, so to speak. I end up getting in touch with somebody else who I went to college with, who works for a wholesaler in the Northeast, because I needed to get out of this job. And so I connect with him, and we're talking, and I was like, finally, this is my way out. And so I end up getting this job in 2017, working at a warehouse. And this is kind of where I first start to enter into the industry, working specifically in like freight, because working in this warehouse, I was unloading trucks every day, talking to drivers. I did a lot of inventory stuff. So I was finally on that side of things. Mind you, at this certain time, though, in 2017, I also was the first time like a doctor recommended that I should be on cholesterol medication, 27, mind you. So this is a young age.
I was going to ask. Yeah, you were young.
So it's kind of frightening. And in my mind, I'm also thinking, oh, heart disease, quote unquote, runs in my family, because my grandfather, he passed away in 2013 due to complications from heart disease. His father and my grandfather also had his first heart attack at 50 before I was born. His father died, I believe, in his 50s as well. His father also being a driver. So when I hear that I need cholesterol medication, I'm kind of getting scared. But in my mind, I was like, no, I don't want to do this. In my head, I was just like, I'll eventually turn this around. And I
quick question.
Mm-hmm.
What was at this time, this is where you were the highest weight, right? And this is when you started your journey. What was do you share what your high weight was at that time?
280 pounds.
Okay. I just wanted to kind of paint a picture for our listeners, because if they look at you, you look really fit, really healthy, and they're like, yeah, what this guy. But so I want them to understand where you started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm for reference, I'm in the purgatory of height. I'm 5'11", so I'm not cool enough at 6 feet, and I'm but I'm not quite not quite the midget, but in the eyes, so I'm in the purgatory of height. So I was 5'11", 280.
Okay. Just there you guys go. There's your picture of where Michael started.
Mm-hmm. And so from there, from 2017, flash forward to 2018. This is when I started to make a change. I had gotten engaged that summer, still didn't do anything, but in November of 2018, and I always highlight the reason why it's November, and I'll go back to that later, especially as we start talking about it being the new year and with new goals. In November of 2018, a very good friend of mine, somebody who I went to Afghanistan with, suddenly passes away, and it came out of left field. It was big time. And I remember stepping on the scale, seeing that number at my highest weight, which was really like 282, 283. Like I would float. I'd float between, depending on how much I was drinking or what I had the night before, between 278 and 283, like floating between that weight. And I remember looking at my hands, looking how my cheeks looked in the mirror. And in my head, the first thing I can think of is, and my friend's name is Matt Brown, was if I could talk to him right now and tell him how I was feeling, what would he tell me? And, what would he have to say to me if I was to tell him about how unhappy I was, all this stuff, XYZ, what could he tell me? Even though he's gone, what would he? And I mean, that following week or within the next few days is when I started going to this CrossFit gym, not far from the warehouse I worked at. Now at this warehouse, I worked some longer hours. We had a longer rack body truck that I had driven, and a box truck. So I kind of did, that was the perks of working in the warehouse, is I did kind of every job. I would sometimes be at the desk. I would be driving a forklift. I would use the box truck for deliveries. And so it was really busy. It was like longer hours, 10, 11-hour days. But this CrossFit gym I joined, this is what's really important, is it was the path of least resistance. Is I joined this gym because so it's least resistance because it's group fitness, one. So I don't have to plan the workout or figure it out. It's coach led. Two, there's two ways to get back to where I lived. I was in West Haven, Connecticut at the time. There was two ways I can get home from the warehouse, and both ways I could go, I would have to pass this gym. So no matter what, there wasn't a back way, there wasn't another way, there was another cheat code to where, so I had to physically drive by it to get home. And there were days that I've driven by it because I just wanted to go home and felt so bad that I drove back past it, felt like such like a loser, that I would turn around and go back. Like instead of taking the 5:30 p.m., I would take the 6:30 p.m. So it was like almost like a punishment. So I continue this process. I lose this is 2018. We go into 2019. I get married in September 2019. But before my wedding, I had managed to lose about 40 pounds. Now, the process of this weight loss started with, which is important, especially as go into being over the road and for new drivers, is I was creating new habits and then building on top of them. So what had happened was the first thing I did was get movement. I was like, I need to move my body. And so that's what I did. No matter what, I went to this class. What movement looked like, it didn't matter. It was because I knew I was going to be there for 1 hour. In that 1 hour, I was going to get a little bit of cardio and a little bit of lifting. It didn't matter what it was. I wasn't tracking steps. I wasn't tracking miles. I didn't have like weekly mileage or anything. I just knew I needed to get this movement, whatever it was. And that became a habit. I did that for several months. I didn't really change anything about what I was really eating. I didn't really change because I didn't have any of those habits, because in the Marines, you can kind of eat whatever you want because you're always running, you're always in the field training, and you're also 20 years old. So your body's just that resilient.
High metabolism.
Yeah. You're able to do that. And so, but that's the first thing I did. And for several months, I did, I go to the gym, I build this habit. The weight doesn't really budge. I maybe lose like 10-ish pounds in like 3 months. But this coach, he starts to develop a relationship with me because he sees my consistency. And then that's when he starts asking me about, he's like, what are you eating outside of here? And he's like, hey, you should and he starts giving me the direction to go into with focusing on protein, do this. So from there, I started to grocery shop. And that was it. So I would at this point, I was buying my own food for a week, like what was going to cover me for breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the week. And path of least resistance. Once again, I had an air fryer. I wasn't meal prepping for a week. I did it the quickest and most efficient way I could to cook chicken breast. And I got frozen vegetables and I was microwaving them. I still was not tracking anything or anything. So those are two habits right there that I stacked. And that's what I kept doing. But along the way, as I started to change my diet, we're talking going into summer of 2019. I like the habit of movement now is 6-7 months in. The food habit's about 3 months in. Because I'm on this good path and I'm starting to see progress, I'm drinking a little bit less alcohol because I want to wake up on a Saturday morning and go to this community workout. So I'm not going to go out on Friday nights. My lifestyle kind of starts to change. Like there's this, because I stacked these two habits and I'm seeing this progress, I was like, oh, I don't need to go on a Friday night. I really want to go to this workout. And then I'll have all day Saturday if I really want to have fun, or if we're going to go out, if we're going to go party and do whatever we want. And so I end up losing this weight to, leading up to my wedding, but, about 40 or so pounds after we get married. And this is an important part too, because this is why, again, I talked about those trickle-down effects earlier about mental health. But 5 weeks before my wedding, I was actually offered a promotion to run a store and warehouse in northern New Jersey. And so this is the first time ever, really, I had been offered a promotion at a job outside of being promoted to corporal in the Marine Corps. And so getting this promotion, I was very excited. What the salary was not what I know the job should have been. And for the first time ever, I stood up for myself. I negotiated salary for this promotion. And what ended up being a good thing is it didn't go my way. Like it was turned down. Like my negotiation didn't work. It was like, no, this is what it is. And this is kind of the trajectory of what it would be. And for the first time ever, I valued myself enough to be like, that's not going to do it for me. So I turned down this promotion. But if that happened to me a year prior, I think I would have accepted it because I didn't value myself enough because I would have thought the promotion was high enough and good enough of a reward as it was that, oh my God, I can't believe I'm being offered this. So if that happened in 2018, like that same summer, I might have accepted it, not valuing myself, not realizing I was actually worth more. Whereas in 2019, when I get offered it, I'm like, no, I'm actually worth a little bit more of this because of my experience, because of X, Y, Z. I turn it down, and they wanted me to move 5 weeks before my wedding. It was like pretty nuts. So we get married.
That's a lot.
Yeah, it was a whole lot real quick. We get back, from our honeymoon. This is October, and I'm at this point now where I've turned down this promotion. So I've got to think about next steps. I'm 29, I'm turning 30 in, just a few months, you know, and my wife at the time, she's also in the same boat of what's next. We're married now with, we're thinking about our future, having a family, et cetera. Where do we want to be? We start making plans, long story short, we start making plans that we're going to move to Texas. And I knew full well, just from having worked in a warehouse now for 3 years, and I have called myself on the internet Lombard Trucking since 2010. That's always the important part. When I was still in the Marines, I made a Twitter account in 2010, called myself Lombard Trucking because the idea of having a username was like brand new, and I wasn't going to use my AIM screen name as my username on Twitter. Because that would have been embarrassing. So I've called myself Lombard Trucking. I work in a warehouse. I talk to drivers all the time. I knew coming to Texas, I was like, when we move, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to get my CDL. I'm going to honor my family's legacy, and I'm going to see what this can do for me because I know it can open up doors. So we get to Texas in 2020, and all the while I'm still continuing these good habits. I'm in CDL school now, and then and I have a conversation with my brother, and he's just like, "Hey, you've been making good progress. You remember how Pa died, our grandfather. You remember how he died. You're going to go into you're going into a very unhealthy profession." And I said earlier, again, my grandfather had his first heart attack at 50, before I was even born, which is not okay. Like that's not, that shouldn't be considered normal. We shouldn't be tolerating that. And so that kind of stuck out. Like I remember having this gut check, like here I am passionate about to get into something I really, really want to do, that I'm being driven and feeling called to do. But now these great habits that I built are now all of a sudden at risk. So I start doing some research online about ways to stay healthy, what you should do on the road. I bought David Goggins' first book, Can't Hurt Me, and knowing full well that that access to the gym, and this is COVID, by the way, so gyms weren't really like that open. When I moved to Texas, I was like riding Peloton, and I wasn't running at all. I was like riding Peloton and riding like a road bike and just like going for walks and going to whichever gym was open. And so I realized I'm losing everything. I pick up Goggins' first book and I backed myself into a corner. I didn't know what going over the road was like. I didn't know what the lifestyle was going to be. I didn't know what the gym was going to look like. But I knew that at the end of the day, you can run anywhere. Like running's free. Like you buy one pair of shoes, they're going to last you X amount of time. Like no matter what, if you're in a parking lot, like you can run in circles. That was it. And so while I was in CDL school, is when I started to run. And when I started running, I can go back on the Strava or my Apple Watch Fitness. Like it would be a 2-mile run. Like, and it would take me 25 minutes or what have you, however long it would take, because the endurance really wasn't there. So it's just like,
that endurance is there a lot more than it would be if I started running. I couldn't do 2.5 miles out the gate.
Yeah, and you have to be, everybody starts different places, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I started running no matter what. When I got back from CDL school, I would get, from being there all day, and I had to drive far. I had to drive about 40 minutes to Killeen. I went to ATDS, would go to school, come back. I was probably back around 5:30ish, and would go for, and then would go for a run, whatever that looked like, whatever that distance was. When I got so I finished CDL school. I get over the road with my trainer. I'm reading David Goggins' first book, and I highlight it because it flipped a switch in my brain about just time management overall, and about when to utilize your time, and how we actually have more time than we're led to believe. And nowhere did this make more sense because of the electronic log and the idea of, you could drive 11 hours a day in this 14-hour window. You have to take a 10-hour break. And so even if you can only take 10 hours off, there's 2 hours of you time that I would dedicate. And while I was with my trainer, I would also, so this research I had been doing in CDL school, I had downloaded MyFitnessPal and learned how to track food. This is what I do. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing. This is where people can get lost. But again, this is where we'll touch into that for what new drivers can do, because to overwhelm somebody, and this is what's important about like the new year, when you overwhelm yourself, because that's not how I started. Again, I explained how I started. It was just one habit. I didn't start by going to the gym, tracking my food, quit drinking. I didn't bring I didn't overhaul my lifestyle for this. Like, again, we're talking, this is a year and a half of transition into going over the road of building these habits to where I was then open now to this idea of adding tracking. So I download my Fitness Pal. I learn how to track food. I go out my trainer. I can't bring the air fryer with me or anything. So I'm just barcode scanning and Googling what the nutrition facts are for like Subway. And at the truck stop, I'm finding who has fruit, who has the protein bars. And I'm just tracking everything I ate. And I went off there and made sure I stayed within this calorie goal. So I'm with this trainer for 2 weeks, and I did that for 2 weeks straight. Or no matter what, like, I know for food, this is what I need to focus on, is just making sure I stay within this calorie number. That's it. Not focusing on anything else, carbs, protein, anything else. I just wanted to stay in this calorie number. So in 2 weeks, I built that habit. I get out in my own truck. Also during those 2 weeks, when we shut down, I talked to the trainer. We'd route plan the next day. So we'd be like, okay, we're shut down now. We're going to start rolling at 4, 5, 6 in the morning. So that's 10, 11, 12 hours from now. All right, I'm going to go for 45-minute run. Sometimes it was a walk. Sometimes it wasn't even a run. I would just get my headset on, go make phone calls and walk. So 2 weeks with my trainer, I built those habits myself. When I get out over the road myself, that was priority number one, where I then learned while I was with my trainer, a tractor trailer can pull into any Walmart. So I knew I can grocery shop there. So you might not be able to park there overnight, but I know I can grocery shop there. And that's how I lived this lifestyle. I had the air fryer. I made sure I kind of ate the same stuff every day. I tracked my macros and I tracked what I ate. And no matter what, every time I pulled that yellow tab, I would drive with my running shoes on, again, path of least resistance. So that lifestyle became waking up. I would go to inside. Breakfast was an apple, banana, protein bar. Come back, finish the pre-trip, start driving, drive 5, 6 hours or what have you. Take the 30-minute break, get your hours back. Sometimes, depending on how far I was driving, like depending on where I was going, like if you only need to drive so many miles in a day, sometimes it'd be longer than 30 minutes. And I would, again, get some steps in there. Would just walk the lot and then drive the rest of my clock, park. And as soon as I parked, I would go on Google Maps, look around, see where I should go. And I would just throw on my water pack and I would get out there. There were days where it was just walking, plenty of times. And I just drilled this habit into myself. Again, those are the keys right there, is using the ELD in front of you, and then proper route planning. But the idea of, that's where I would get my food, grocery shop at Walmart. I was getting chicken, frozen vegetables, cups of rice, and making sure I was staying within this consistent goal. Reading the Goggins book is kind of where the key flipped, because once I finished it in fall of 2020, it went from, oh, this isn't just about being healthy anymore. I need to be an outlier. Like I need to stand out. Like I should be. And if you follow Goggins on social media, he's always talking about being in the 1% and all this stuff, and being uncommon amongst the common. So in my head, I was like, this is what I need to do. And so it almost became like, you could say it's an ego thing, but that's what it became, is like, I need to be the best version of myself. Like, when people hear ego, they think of it as a bad thing. It can be bad, but you can also let it work in your favor. And so I thought in my head, I should be an outlier. I'm doing this very difficult job. It's very strenuous. I should train for longer runs, longer endurance events. And so I did, like, over time. But to make myself stand out a little bit more, and as I was getting more and more in shape, this is what I talk about, that trickle down stuff. For the first time, I start making and creating content. Like I start making TikTok videos about me going on these runs, and I would talk about history and scream and about, this is why you should be in shape. And finally, I would have tried to run a marathon in 2021, but it was still like COVID-y, so those events weren't happening. So I kept running. I was in this very, very good rhythm and routine. I mean, I was down to and I'm not saying everybody needs to do this, but I was at the point where if I was waiting in line at the fuel island, I would if there was 2 trucks in front of me, guy getting fuel and another guy in front of me, I would be parked, pull out the air fryer, scale the chicken, put it in the air fryer for 20 minutes. By the time I'm getting fuel, the chicken breast is done. I would microwave the vegetables, pull around, park, there's lunch right there. And I had a high protein meal. That was lunch. It was already done. So if we're talking like fast food, like I made fast food myself. Like that's what I would do. I would make it in the fuel island anytime I had a rare opportunity. Same thing if I was at a shipper or receiver. You're going to be at a shipper receiver no matter what for an hour. Sometimes you get lucky, you're there for 30 minutes. Like every now and then you get somebody who's red hot, but shipper receiver, I'm getting steps. Like I'm walking, even if it's just lengths of the truck, or I'm swinging the kettlebell, or I'm doing something. If you're at a shipper and receiver for 1 to 3 hours, that is an opportunity to move your body around and do something, even if it's just stretching. That's also would be like shipper receiver. I'm cooking dinner there. Oh, instead of waiting to eat or waiting, like I'll eat here. And then when I get parked, instead I'll have a lighter dinner. I'll just have like fruit or something like that. So finding the time where you wanted it. That was the most important thing, is not really finding the time, but making it and utilizing it in your favor. If you're at that shipper receiver for 3 hours, you're there for 4 hours. I would get in 3-4 miles of walking, like waiting at some of these shippers and receivers. Should drivers be waiting at these places that long? Is detention a huge issue in this industry? Of course. But like, I kind of pull this energy from guys like Goggins and Jocko, where it's like, there's nothing you can do to change that right now. You can't fix the tension at that very moment. You can't get the green light any quicker. So what can you do? What can you do at that point in time? You've got to change it. Okay, I'm here for 3 hours. I've been here for 3 hours. What's something good I can do in between? Like, you can get on TikTok and make an angry video and maybe get 100,000 views, but does that do anything? It's not going to help. It's not going to help you in the long run. So like, finding that time is very important. Along, again, reading that book, having this idea of being uncommon amongst the common. That's why I was like, I'm going to do a marathon. This is why I'm going to sign up for it, to show. And the entire goal wasn't, and I've said this time and time again, it's not about saying this is what you have to do. It's about leading by example, to say there's no limits to what you can do. Like, just because you're a driver, your career choice doesn't dictate your health. Like, your career choice doesn't have to dictate your health. And that doesn't mean you need to run a marathon. However, this shows you that this is how far you can go if you really want to. This is what you can do. It's not impossible. You can do it. And I've lived it, going from not running, being somebody who was a cigarette smoker for also 9 years. I quit smoking in about 2016. So it's like, I smoked cigarettes for nearly 9 years. I've lived this entire lifestyle and completely, essentially 180'd it, got into a career where running marathons is extremely rare, and was still able to do it. And that's why I had led by example. And those are the keys, especially if you're over the road. Like, and this is why I'm doing what I do now, and getting at especially with new drivers. And this is why it's so important, is because this all needs to be taught in CDL schools. Like, this needs to be part of the curriculum, part of the education of, hey, this is like, there needs to be an entire, I think, day or 2 days where you talk about, you're going to be at shippers and receivers. This is your ELD. This is why you need to do it. It needs to be what I'm doing. I don't want to, like I said, nobody needs to live exactly how I lived, but there needs to be a basic foundation of this job and this career where it needs to be a part of the curriculum. Because if it's not built on top of that, like, if we're not teaching new drivers, hey, this is where you should grocery shop, this is how you should do it, this is when you can move, this is where you should get exercise. If we're not teaching them that, and they don't go out with that, it's very hard for somebody to has already, and again, you said it in your introduction, there's already drivers out there who can start this at any time right now. But again, it's really hard to pry your way out of it when you're already that deep into it at a certain point. So for new drivers coming in, it's incredibly important, because that's how I think, because if we were to just go into the industry now on an individual level and help drivers who've already been driving for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, it's hard to affect an industry change. But if the entire new generation of new drivers is learning this now, as they enter the industry, it'll compound faster. That's kind of why it's more important. I'm not saying we ignore veterans in the industry. Absolutely not. I'm just saying, for the overall change, the basis of this job needs to be set on the foundation of health and fitness, or it will lead to serious issues as they start to advance in their career. Because like you said about the age, like, you can get away when you're in your 20s, 30s, and early 40s, you can get away with ignoring all this stuff. You could still operate at a high level. You can do all this stuff. But once you get into your 40s and into your 50s, the twilight of your career, that's when the health issues are going to start coming up. That's when the That's when your DOT medical card is going to start being at risk. And that's when you need the money the most. When you are later in life, when you have family that's growing up, when they're starting to finish high school, when they're starting to go to college, when your kids are starting to get married. If you're in your 40s or 50s, that's when those things are happening. That's when you're not yet at retirement, but you're also not that new. Like, you still need to be providing that income. But all in all, I again, as I went across, not to sidetrack, because we'll get into that kind of that stuff in a little bit.
We sidetrack a lot on this show. It's okay.
Yeah, that's just a little bit of overall philosophy. But my journey over because I was over the road for 3 years, and I ran 5 marathons in that time, and that was not planned. Like, that wasn't planned at all. And again, the reason why I did it was to just like live and lead by this example. But the thing is the healthier and healthier I got, the more and more involved I wanted to be. And again, I started making content. I started the podcast show that I did, and it became something of my story. And then when I had owned my own truck, and I was leased on to a couple different carriers, that because I was living this healthy lifestyle and this brain fog was kind of reduced, I started wanting to and once I got my own truck, I really started to learn about issues in the industry, especially in the tumultuous time that was really 2022, when fuel started to skyrocket and rates really started to flatline, and double brokering was becoming a major issue. And, the price of equipment was like skyrocketing because of this massive elastic band issue. So I started really focusing and paying attention to what was going on. So I started having drivers onto the show, talking about stuff in the industry, realizing that there's problems, also realizing that this health issue. So I've been on this journey for so long. That's when I started to cross paths with guys like Mark Manera and other people in the industry who are also talking about this. And that's when I learned about the stats. When I was still driving, I learned about this whole idea that the average life expectancy is 61, that the rates of chronic disease are double that of the working class population, that the percentage of drivers who are living with 2 or more chronic conditions. And because I started learning all this stuff, is again, as I was climbing up this mountain, I'm thinking I need to go back down, and I need to get involved with helping people feel how I'm feeling and be able to do what they're doing. Because I was operating, when I was over the road, I was operating on this level where I'd have days of waking up, start driving at 4 a.m., drive, be shutting down around 3 or 4 in the afternoonish, depending on how far I had to drive. And then I would shut down, go for a run for 45 minutes, come back, record a podcast, cook my own dinner, and go to bed still get 7-8 hours of sleep, and wake up and do it all over again. That's a well-oiled, to be able to do that is incredibly difficult. It's to have that level of mental bandwidth. And I still sometimes don't know how I did it, but I did it because I was living this healthy lifestyle that gave me the energy, the natural energy I needed to be able to do that. And in my mind, I was like, imagine if there was 2 of me. Imagine if there was 4 of me. Imagine if you quantified, again, not people doing exactly what I'm doing, but imagine if this is how every driver was operating, where they were able to be this level involved with OIDA and their state trucking association, or any of these other advocacy groups. Because that's when I got involved with organizations like OIDA. That's what got me to go to the Mid-America Truck Show. That's what got me to want to talk and get networked with people on LinkedIn. I just wanted to meet and connect with more people on this, to talk about these major issues going on in the industry, because I'd been living this lifestyle and I had the bandwidth to give into it. When you don't have that bandwidth, you could be mad and you might know about the issues, but then it's very hard to commit to any action to help solving these, like getting involved in organizations and showing up to meetings and being on committees and going to certain events, going to the truck shows, going to, some of the events that you attend. It's very hard to want to do those things. And then by the time you're on home time as well, you're home, maybe you're home for 4 days, day and a half, 2 of those days you're sleeping. It's very hard to be involved if your physical and mental health is not there. You might know the problems exist, you're upset about them, but the physical and mental health is not there to participate in trying to help solve these issues, isn't going to be there. So in my head, this is what I'm thinking as I'm learning about all these issues and then these health issues. And in my mind, I was like, they're one and the same. I was like, if we can get this industry healthy, because if the industry starts getting healthy, then maybe some more people will start thinking thinking kind of on the same track that people like you and I start thinking, and how we're talking about the issues going on in the industry. And that's where I started to lean into coaching. When I was still driving is when I got my ACE certification, because I was going to lean into this. I didn't know how that was going to look like in general. I just knew that if I was going to differentiate myself as just a guy on the internet talking about health and fitness, I should get some form of credential that said that's like, oh, you're an actual registered fitness, you're an actual like certified fitness coach, so to speak. So I didn't know what coaching was going to look like, but I knew that, oh, maybe I should get credentialed in this and learn more about this, so that way I can talk on it that much more. Because like Mark Maneri, he's a physical therapist. This guy's a doctor. He kind of has, he has a leg to stand on when it comes to health. And if I'm just a healthy guy, so I did it to kind of like legitimize myself along the way. And that's really where I had started to lean into coaching. But I know I just dished out a lot. I'd love
you did, but I want to address that last little part you said. There's a lot of trainers that come out here and they don't have the accountability because they didn't have the journey that you had. And a lot of people are going to follow the guy who lived it versus the guy who just talks about it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think lived experience, and it's especially important in an industry like trucking. Like when it comes to like I think in other industries it could catch on. Like, say you're, at a corporate event and you have a motivational speaker at it, and that motivational speaker has a completely different story, but I think they can still inspire a room. But when you need to speak to this industry, but when it comes to speaking to the trucking industry, if you don't speak driver, it's really, really hard to get drivers to tip that cap and to lend you their ear because of that. I think that which is good and bad, because I think that there's probably are a lot of good people who do want to help this industry and be very involved, and maybe sometimes they go a little bit ignored, or it just takes them a little bit longer to earn that trust. But that exists for a reason. It takes so long to earn drivers' trust because they've been railroaded and have been being railroaded since the Motor Carrier Act of 1980. Like, if we're being real, drivers have been raked through the coals. They've seen it deteriorate since 1980, especially who's been around a while, that it's going to be really hard to trust somebody, because a lot of people who have also tried to come in and help are really just looking for your money. Like, hey, I've developed this new piece of technology. We're here to save your business and do all this stuff. Like, they've been raked over the coals. So it's hard to earn that trust, which is all the more reason why I knew, like, I need to put my stake in the ground on this, because I have lived it. I've known it from my own family experience, from my own experience. And that's why, like, I essentially declared, like, no matter what, I can't separate myself from this, because I believe and fully believe that every driver deserves to feel the way I would feel and as healthy as I felt when I was over the road, because I know what it can do for their life, their livelihood, their family, their relationships, their job, and their career.
Yes. Thank you your story is very inspirational, and I hope anybody new watching will take the time out to go check it out and all you do, because all those videos that you're doing now and the lives and the TikToks and the reels on Facebook are very high energy motivating. You are a high energy motivating force, and it's awesome to see. And I think it's very addictive.
No, I appreciate that a lot. It's become a lot of fun, and especially over the road, it was really fun because of how I remember the first time I went to the Mid America Truck Show, and that was like the first time I'd ever gone anywhere that wasn't like, related to like maybe a high school reunion or something. Like, it's the first time I went to an event where people I've never met before recognize who I was, mainly because of my hair. The hair definitely sticks out in a lot of ways. And I remember like somebody telling me, like, for the first time, like, dude, man, that video you posted the other day when you were screaming about Napoleon or whatever, because of how I tie it in, which is very specific to me. Like, I'm definitely a big history guy. I love it. And I just have this idea in my head of, like, you think about events in, whether it's ancient history or even as recent as, the Second World War or what have you. When you look at those events and what those people have, and again, for anybody who's maybe never seen any of my videos, they can reach out and I can send you some. When I look at these historical events, like take something from like the Napoleonic Wars, you look at what their resources were, Like, so an army like that, which is wearing wool uniforms, they basically are eating bread and whatever they can find. And they're able to do these monumental tasks and achievement. And they win these great victories that you read about. But like in my head, you have to realize like these people were like, if when they weren't in the army, they were like farming or like a blacksmith or drove a wagon, or they were very common people. Like they had nothing, and they had a lot less resources. They didn't have the internet. They didn't have freaking coaches. They didn't have all they didn't have any of the means that we have today, but yet they accomplished these like really heroic and gallant tasks. During like the Napoleonic Wars or the Civil War or the Second World War, you hear about these stories and we glorify them. And it's like, how can you relate that to, how can we learn from that today? And I think that's the way, at least that's how I learned from it. And that was an excuse for me, like, especially in a day where it's 10 degrees in Iowa and I know I've got to at least go for like a 4-mile run. In my head, I'm like, well, back then they didn't have, I'm like, these guys in Bastogne, you watch Band of Brothers, they didn't have warming layers and all this stuff. I'm like, I got a ski mask, I've got leggings, I've got gloves, I've got a scarf. There's no reason I can't go outside and these guys were in Bastogne for however long they were during the Battle of the Bulge, freezing to death. I was like, I can go out in this weather for 45 minutes and just jog and come back. And so I was like, I can make that into a video. Like, hey, these guys were also doing stuff in the cold. They didn't have a warm truck to go back to. They didn't have warming layers. They didn't have this. And that's kind of where I learned to combine it, is like, we want to do these things. We want to be healthy. We want to eat right. We want to get outside and move. Like, people know that that's the right thing to do, but the excuses will pile up very easily. I say often, there's one why and there's a million why nots, and you've got to really wrestle and fight through the why nots to get to the why. And when you can really lean on that idea, and so that's why I would make those videos about like, hey, these people, these like nobodies, this nobody army was able to do this. Like, you can get outside and go walk. Like, you can get after it. Like, even if it's just going outside for 10 minutes just to stretch your legs. Like, if they can do that difficult of a task under duress, you can willingly make the choice to go out there and do that. And it became almost like, and it became like a competition with myself. Like, it opened up my creativity. And that's one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about social media, is because I think, for as much bad as social media kind of has done for, whether it's news, media, society, young people's mental health, I think that there's been an extreme gain where people have also gotten to lean in and find some of their own creativity within their own personalities that they wouldn't quite experiment with, because not everybody's a writer. Not everybody, it's very hard to buy camera equipment. You think about making old videos in like the 90s, where now people are able to kind of explore their own creativity. And as you do that, you start to get more and more creative over time. And that's where it's kind of just written itself. And as the technology's improved with editing and stuff, you're able to really add in your own personal brand, personal touches into it. That's become a lot of fun. And the high energy needs to be the reason why. And again, if you meet me in person, or if you come take one of my Orange Theory classes, like, if I'm going to be someplace, I'm going to be there. And you've got to give that energy, because I think everybody knows what it's like to be either in a classroom or anywhere where somebody's sucking the energy out of the room, where it's
yes. But so, you brought up some great points. And I think what I want for people to understand when they're coming into the industry are the lifestyle issues that they're going to be facing right off the bat, that they're going to have to adjust to. And the main ones, and the biggest ones, in my opinion, are going to be the extended periods that you are sitting. It's going to be that limited access to food and exercise that you're going to have to get creative with. It's the stress. We know the chronic stress the drivers face with traffic and deadlines, working that clock. That's an everyday thing. The sleep disruptions. And one of the biggest ones that people seem to put on the back burner is the social isolation that drivers are dealing with on a daily, being away from friends and family. And all those things, you think, oh, well, you lose some sleep. Okay. Traffic was a little stressful. What's the harm? What's that going to do to me? Well, it's going to make you fat. Drivers, 69%, 70% truck drivers are obese. with the national average is like 40, 42%, right? High blood pressure, diabetes, sleep apnea. I mean, I think our industry has the highest number of people that have sleep disorders and are on sleep apnea machines.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention, I'm not a smoker, but I know most of the people that I know that drive smoke, which increases that. Um, and then you have your back and joint issues from sitting for long periods of time and not doing anything. So you enter the trucking career, the lifestyle, you're going to have to face all these issues. And you come up with some really great ways to take all of those lifestyle issues and find a way to make them work for you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you listed all the top big ones right there. So like when it comes
I think I did. I think I got them.
yeah, no, the biggest things. What's crazy is in a newsletter I do weekly, which is called Taillights, I always put a health tip of the week, and I'm always harping on things, especially like sleep, because there are like very minimal things you can do that will have such a huge benefit to just how you sleep, how you feel, and and how how you're going to perform throughout your day. And so that number one thing you mentioned, which is the sedentary lifestyle, the idea that you're going to be sitting a lot. What's really, and that right there lays as number one. I think it's like number one and number two most important things that are going to get you on the right track is number one, the movement. Number two is the food. I think the food is definitely more important. What we put in our bodies is definitely a factor, but what you can do first, and I only say this because this is what I did first, and it could be different for everybody, is the movement. So for that sedentary lifestyle, and this is for somebody who's could be extremely at risk, somebody who is 350, close to 400 pounds. When I say at risk, I'm talking the category of being morbidly obese, which is a medical term. Somebody who's in that boat, one of the biggest things that they can do, and this is what I tell any new driver, somebody who's at risk, and it's technically two of these things, but that movement is really important. And so maybe you can't run. That's fine. Maybe you can't lift any weights or squat or lunge. That's perfectly fine. But what anybody can do, and you have to do this no matter what line of freight you're in, is walk. Walking alone is the biggest thing you can do. And say walking from the truck to the door of the truck stop makes you winded, that is okay. You need to break it into increments. Again, the same reason, like I didn't go from running 2 miles to the marathon in a week. It took months and months. It took years to be able to do that. And it takes people years to do that. It took me years to go, to be able to be fit enough and believe in myself enough to go to Ironman. Like none of that happens very quick. And I think, and again, this is kind of sidetracked. People want things quickly. And I think technology and the idea of comfort has ruined that. We have Amazon Prime. There's, your next date is one swipe away on a dating app. Like everything is very quick, and we want our problem solved, and this technology does it. Nothing, convenience and comfort, nothing comes quickly. And so for somebody who is extremely at risk, that sitting, just so people know it's clear, because I think the fear part is important. And I talk about this whenever I go and speak at events, is living a sedentary lifestyle of getting 3,000 or less steps per day and doing no exercise is just as dangerous to your health as smoking. Again, so 3,000 or less steps and zero exercise is just as bad for your body, for your blood pressure, and for your heart as being a cigarette smoker. Which that right there should kind of wake people up. Like, oh wow, me just not doing anything is the same as smoking cigarettes. That's pretty horrible. And when it comes to that movement, getting those steps, if walking for 5 minutes gets you out of breath, then walk for 5 minutes and take a break. Wait, take a small break and then go for another 5 minutes. If you only have 5 minutes, get the 5 minutes then. Get the 5 minutes on your 30-minute in the morning. Get the 5 minutes on your 30-minute break and get the 5 minutes at night. You've had 15 minutes of daily and intentional movement that you wouldn't have normally done when you used to have zero. And that right there will already start filling up. The benefits of walking, by the way, is that it is zone 2 cardio. It's very good for your heart. Doesn't put a lot of strain on you. Nobody has ever gone out for a walk and came back and said, I feel worse, like I'm in a worse mood or anything. What it does for your blood flow, because again, when you're sitting, you have to think about the angle of your body. You're essentially at a 90-degree angle. You got to think about how the blood travels throughout your body. it takes a lot, has to go through a lot of different, it has to take a lot of turns. So your heart has to work harder and puts a little bit more strain. When you're walking, you're allowing blood to start freely moving. And it's going to help with your digestion. It's going to help with your sleep. Moving into the food piece. So that's first and foremost. So that is if you're extremely at risk or brand new, walking is the number one thing for anybody that you should be doing at any point in time whenever you can. You don't need to squat. You don't need a lunge. You don't need to get any sort of fancy equipment. There are people who have lost hundreds of pounds purely by walking, and they've changed their diet in other ways too. And if you're somebody who can do two things at once, if you are able to incorporate just 15 to 30 minutes of walking per day, and you're a soda drinker and you switch to diet, you're not only burning more calories than you have before you started walking, you're taking in less calories just by switching to diet. Like those are the when it comes to two pieces of advice, I think can set anybody where if anybody's looking to start up for success, would be incorporate any sort of walking. And then if you're drinking your calories, so this could be juice too. If you're drinking any beverage that has calories, switch to the diet option and you're automatically burning more and taking in less calories, which is how you lose weight. Weight is lost by calories in versus out, how much energy you use and how much energy you're eating. Those are like the first two big things for anybody getting started. And they're fairly easy to do because you can walk anywhere. And no matter what, I know that these travel centers do sell the diet version of this drink.
Yeah. For those that don't know, I do believe it's 30. Let me Google it. It's like 35 laps around your truck and trailer equals a mile. 33. It's 30 something, 32, 33, 34. Laps around your truck and trailer combination makes a mile. So most truck drivers, when they get out at a ship or receiver, fuel, use the restroom, they do a walk around. So if you can increase your walk arounds throughout the day to where you are walking around that thing 35 times, even if you're doing it multiple times at night and in the morning, that's a mile.
Exactly. You can find where those things are. I mean, when it comes to the time factor or the walking, I know that it's a very tough job when it comes to the time. I know drivers have the time to do it because I did live it. And I knew where to find the time, but I see how many drivers are very active. Drivers are very active on TikTok and YouTube and all forms of social media. They're very active. I know that they're active because they're in my comment section. They're in other people's comment sections. I see comments, and drivers have a lot of time. You can drop those comments while you're walking. Everybody's got the headset. Everybody's got the Larry Coffin headset.
Hashtag. We need a hashtag for making laps around the walking hashtag and have them send videos in. We'll create a hashtag. How's that? And have them hashtag and tag us in videos doing laps.
Yeah, when you're walking. Yeah, when you're actively walking, you do it. But I've done that multiple nights where I would jump in a Twitter space with a bunch of drivers, or I would jump on a TikTok live, and I would throw on my weighted vest, put my headset on, and I'd have and sometimes if it was dark, I'd have a headlamp. I'd wear my safety jacket, and I would just walk in circles around the parking lot with my headset on, jumping on a TikTok live, walking around, or jumping on a Twitter space, and be doing it as opposed to sitting or laying down in the bunk. Like if you're going to be up scrolling on your phone, I'm not going to tell anybody, reduce your screen time, do all that stuff. Like do what you want with your time, but make it work for you. Like you could doom scroll all you want, but doom scroll where your legs are in motion. Like if you could do that, like, cause that right there, cause if you do that, if you start doom scrolling while you're walking, you'll probably start doom scrolling a little bit less.
Yeah. And women, for safety reasons, make sure you're in a well-lit area. And if you don't have a well-lit outside area, you can go inside, like inside a rest area, and do laps inside. So make sure wherever you're at that you do it safely.
Yeah, that is the one thing I've definitely recognized that, and I would be remiss to not say that. I've always considered myself lucky that I was able to do what I've done. I've definitely ran in some weird neighborhoods. I've been chased after by like 4 pit bulls in some, rural areas. And I've been very, very lucky. And and then one time I had a guy, kind of threaten me in this random neighborhood in Oklahoma. where he was, he was like, oh, what if you saw me running around your neighborhood? And I was like, and at the time I was jogging with like, literally I was wearing my like safety vest that you'd wear if you're like at a shipper receiver. And I have like a Camelback. And he's like, what would you do if you saw me running in your neighborhood? And I was like, and I looked down at myself wearing this safety vest. And I was like, honestly, nothing. And so it's like, but I realized that it's definitely far more difficult for women. And I know that, and that's an issue that I take very, very personally. I've had women come on my show talking about having to hide underneath trailers because of being followed by people. And I know that's an extreme risk. And what stinks, and hopefully there's a reality where that doesn't exist in the future. Ways around that. I mean, I know on TikTok Shop and stuff, especially for any ladies out there, if you are concerned for your safety, I think one of those walking treadmills is one of the best investments, whether you are a woman in trucking or you're also you don't want to go out and it's -10 up in the upper Midwest. Those walking treadmills, you could doom scroll inside your cab while you're doing it. And if you are doing that, you are just walk. I need to reiterate, just walking and getting those steps in is saving your life. It is adding years onto your life. And that's how it needs to be viewed.
So what, besides walking, I know we're going to go over some exercises in a little bit. Let's talk about the access to food. So one of your things you said was Walmart. As a prior Walmart driver, and even before I was a Walmart driver, I shopped at Walmart, and that's where I did all my prepping for the truck while I was out on the OTR. And a lot of people, they know they can't always park at them, but they don't realize that they can actually pull in and go do their shopping and go. So besides Walmart, Walmart is nationwide, which is a great thing. What are your tips and tricks for food prepping and where to shop? And do you have maybe some suggestions, Michael, list of do's and don'ts for when you're in a pinch and you only have fast food locations, since you did your scanner?
Yeah, absolutely. So downloading the free version of like MyFitnessPal is definitely really good. I personally use an app called First Form, which is STPHORM. And there's that one you pay a little bit of money for, but you get a lot of great benefits. There's a lot of great videos, educational information. I don't need to pitch that. It was just my tool that I had used while I was on the road. So getting one of those tools is good, because what it will do, getting that tool, is going to help you with step 2, which is being cognizant of what you're eating. So for example, say grocery shopping at Walmart is out, like, you really can't get to one this week, or you're in a bind, and say you are only restricted to being at these truck stops. My number one tip I tell people is focus on protein. Like that, I know I sound like a total, kind of fitness bro, but if you keep protein on the forefront of your mind, and that's how you're going to choose what you're going to eat, you're going to end up making good choices. And so, especially if I was running and gunning, I leaned on Subway a little bit. And I know that, Subway's not really all that great. And I know that the food quality, we can contest that. That's fine. But through using MyFitnessPal, I chose a certain type of bread at Subway, essentially where I knew that the sandwich I was eating had about 800-ish calories, but it also had like 50 something grams of protein, so to speak. So Subway can be your friend if you get the grilled chicken, if you stack it with some veggies, if you get there's a different type of bread that's a little bit lower in calories. But
Ezekiel.
Do they
have Ezekiel there?
I'm not sure. I'd have to really look up which bread I'd use. I forget off the top of my head, but like I'd say the number one place with the healthiest options would be, I think Love's tops the list. Love's and Quick Trip definitely top QTs, and then the quick
nothing tops QT. I mean, Quick Trip up in Wisconsin and the northern states that have the grocery stores in them
they're top tier travel centers for sure. But if you can keep protein on the front of your mind, there's where you win. So for example, if you go to that center aisle, that center piece that has like the fruit cups, the hard-boiled eggs, that area right there also has these pre-made sandwiches. Go lunch that I would get was, so they'll have these smoked ham and cheese sandwiches in that big center kind of refrigerated piece, where you'll see like the cantaloupe, the pineapple, hard-boiled eggs, all that, the salads and all that stuff. And again, people, that's another thing people get confused in. People think like salad equals healthy. And it's like, yes, it is, because it's less calories, but you can also add calories with dressings. Don't want to
Not
sidetrack,
enough
but
protein in them unless they have chicken or meat.
ex-
So
exactly. And you could end up overdoing it with dressing. So I would get one of those smoked ham and cheese sandwiches, which was about 450 calories, has almost 30 grams of protein. And so that right there, so it's a low calorie, has protein. I would get that, get one of the fruit cups, and then I would get one of the protein bars. So I would be having essentially anywhere between 600 and 750 calories, but also getting myself, you're ending up eating, 50 plus grams of protein. And a good metric that I've left out is you want to be, and this is why I don't want to overload anybody, but generally speaking, people, you want to be consuming 1 gram of protein per pound of your goal or ideal body weight. So if you want to weigh 150 pounds, you should aim for 150 grams. Very difficult. So what I always tell people to do is shoot for 100, like shoot for 100 grams of protein, whatever you can do. And then number 2, when it comes to food options at truck stops, is again, like not drinking your calories. Like if you can drink black coffee, switch to diet, get the zero sugar Gatorades. And the argument against that is always, well, aren't artificial sweeteners bad? And to not go into too long of a diatribe, I've read through the study. The study is it's very bad because it has to do with like soaking rat. It would be impossible for artificial sweeteners to really, really be bad for you and to really screw up your system. You'd have to drink like 35 Diet Cokes every day for like the next 60 years or something like that. And overall, if there's no real evidence against artificial sweeteners, the most dangerous thing for your body is like to have that unhealthy lifestyle when there is visceral fat on your organs. So when you are like just being overweight or obese, having the visceral fat that's on your organs is far more dangerous for your overall metabolic health than artificial sweeteners ever will be, because that's what affects your liver, that's what affects your blood pressure. Like that's what helps, like the existence of fat on your organs is what can cause cancer. Like that, those are the things that are cancer causing. The artificial sweeteners are not going to damage you more than excess weight on your body and eating unhealthily. So that's just my only like little argument against that. But those are the things to look out for: is reading the nutrition label, go and focusing on protein. And again, another tool which Mark Monera, I know, we'll talk about, is this new app called OffShift, which is 100% free. So in OffShift, this is the best part because I've figured this out on my own, but now the app does it for you. It gives an entire menu option for almost every fast food chain's better for you options, meaning this is what you can get. It's not necessarily quote unquote, it falls under all the metrics of healthy, but from a macro nutrient standpoint. When I say the word macros, by the way, I'm talking about the big 4, which is calories, protein, carbs, and fats. And carbs and fats don't really matter that much unless you're an endurance athlete or bodybuilding. What really matters are the calories and the protein. People vilify carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are not the enemy. It's the calories that come with the carbohydrates. So just to kind of square that away. And so OffShift will give you the best for you options at McDonald's, Carl's Jr., everything. That means getting the grilled chicken sandwich, swapping the fries for the side salad instead of the regular Coke, the Diet Coke. And it kind of maps it out for you how you can, like if you need fast food, you need something quick, this is what you should get. And normally across fast food chains, that's the healthier option, is getting the grilled chicken sandwich instead, swapping out possibly the gluten-free bun, could have a few less calories, getting the diet soda, swapping the fries for either the side salad at Chick-fil-A's, the Kale Crunch side. Like it has to swap it out. And that app right there, and I know fast food is at every restaurant, but say you don't have this app, say you don't even have a smartphone, what have you. When you're at a fast food place, keep protein on the top of your mind. Think about grilled chicken. Think about those things. So the best way to do it. Even thinking about it from like zooming out, and I tell people this all the time, even if your only option is McDonald's, if you just get the double quarter pounder with cheese, and this is a fun fact, if you just get the double quarter pounder with cheese, you're getting 740 calories with 50 grams of protein. If you get no fries and just the burger and the soda, you've actually got, like, from a macro standpoint, a pretty healthy meal if you're trying to lose weight. Like one of my go-to meals over the road was these burgers I made. I would go to Walmart, get ground beef, get sirloin patties, and these, the patty itself only has so much. And I would buy this low carb keto bread. And then I would get like fat-free singles American cheeses. And I would make 2 burgers in the air fryer, use that low carb keto bread. And I was eating 2 burgers I made myself that had together combined roughly, a little less than 800 calories with like 70, 80 grams of protein between the cheese and both those burger patties. So it's like, changing that view, but the difference between what's healthy and what's not. Sometimes people think it's always the food. On a long enough scale, again, I know that food quality is a huge problem. I'm not a fan of the ingredients and all the stuff and the chemicals and the pesticides. I get that, but we can't solve that now. But what we can solve now, and what drivers can do now, is formulate that way through resources like Off Shift, using MyFitnessPal, and just realizing, being cognizant of how much you're consuming. You can dial that in now and make the better. That's why I don't call them better. Like, they're not better for you. They're better for you options. Like, they're better than what the go-to is. Like, to think, and this also helps people who are extremely at risk going into this. It's the new year, it's January. A lot of people are overloaded with New Year's resolutions, setting goals. They want to lose weight. You cannot I didn't lose 100 pounds by completely overhauling my lifestyle. Like, I didn't on day one change everything about how I lived. Like, that doesn't happen. And for most people, that's why people fail. That's why people fail at New Year's resolutions. That's why they fail at some of their goals, is because you're trying to do too much at once and you're changing your entire system of life. It's impossible. Right. It's impossible to do it. Whereas starting with one goal, that's why the better for you options are better, is because once you've figured out how to choose the healthier options, eventually 3, 4, 5 months from now, you're not going to eat it at all, because you're going to discover this whole other bit of food that you like, that you're going to eat. But to just say, if you're regularly eating fast food every day, drinking, full sugar sodas, and to just go from years of doing that to all of a sudden completely stopping and then only eating salads and drinking water, you might make it 2 weeks, but then you're gonna cave into it. But if you could just swap one out at a time, or you just like, oh, I have to eat McDonald's, and you're like, I'll get the grilled chicken instead. It's a far better. That's that path of least resistance I was talking to on what led to my success.
And for people who are curious about getting to a Walmart, most of the Walmart locations are within a mile of the interstate. And one of the most commonly used apps is Trucker Path. So as a new driver, if you don't have Trucker Path, I strongly recommend getting it. And Trucker Path has Walmart as a option. You just click on it. It'll give you a list of all the Walmart locations. And if you click the reviews for each one, it'll tell you whether you can park there or if it's just somewhere you can shop at and go. And then you can go in and make those healthier choices shopping wise and save money buying your groceries versus going to fast food.
100%. Yeah. Trucker Path is key. I had a Rand McNally GPS, and what was great, that's how I was able to find Walmarts, and why I was able to plan so easily. That Rand McNally GPS I had, if along my route, like it would show, parking truck stops along the route, and Walmarts would come up on them. So I'd know if I was going from Columbus back to St. Louis, I know, like on the list, it would give me Walmarts that are along the route. And then if I knew I was going to stop at this Walmart in wherever, whether it's Richmond, Indiana, wherever I am, I would go on Google Maps and I'd be like, oh, this is where I seem to pull in. And so I'd know as soon as I got off the exit, this is where I pull in. You pull into the Walmart, you can go in the back by their docks, wherever, find some space, grocery shop. I've done it on a 30-minute break. I've pulled in, gotten to a Walmart, gotten out, been back 28 minutes, and boom, I'm back driving on 30 minutes.
I don't think it takes any longer than it does pulling into a truck stop. I mean, by the time you're waiting for trucks to maneuver around the fuel island or to get a parking spot, go in and come out, I think Walmart's just as quick, if not quicker.
Absolutely. It's just that frame of reference in the time, which is, I go back to the David Goggins book so much, and I harp on it and I promote it so much, because his testimony, similar to why I share my testimony, his testimony proves that you have the time, especially when he talks about, these other ultra marathoners that you meet. And having now been in the endurance world, I know these ultra marathoners, these endurance, these Ironman athletes who have these very hard jobs. Some of them they make good money. People at Ironman, I can't say that, but some of them are like lawyers, and lawyers
Yeah.
work incredibly long hours. They're not drivers, but they're behind desks, they're reading, they're working late at night, but they have found their time to be able to get on the bike and do this. And the Goggins book really, especially because of his life story and where he came from and how he was brought up, kind of it's why I make the TikTok videos I did. Like, why, if this random French soldier was able to do this glorious thing in battle, it's the same kind of thing. Like, Goggins had this such tough upbringing, and for him to come around and then become one of the most accomplished ultra athletes of all time. And again, I'm not trying to be him, or am I going to be him? But I know I can at least be the best version of Lombard that I can be because of his testimony. Like, he's just being the best Goggins. I'm just trying to be the best me. And his book does that. And that's also why I talk about what I do and talk about how I find the time. We are new drivers in this industry coming in need to start viewing time as such, as opposed to this ELD is against us. And again, I don't love the ELDs. I don't think that they're great. I think that for safety, they've definitely had a bad effect on safety. It's definitely not good. It's messed around with sleep. It can be somewhat oppressive. How do we make it work for us? How do you make it work for you? And I think changing that, turning the bad into the good, just like you're at that shipper for 4 hours. Well, great. I just got free. Yeah, you're not getting paid. Yeah, it stinks, but you were just given time you thought you didn't have to move, or to cook the healthier meal, to go for a walk, to do some push-ups, to do XYZ. Like, you turning that bad into good, that's where the change starts to happen. And that's where the change can start coming from.
So let's talk about that change. So, new year, new me, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to lose weight. I want to reduce my sugar. I want to lower my cholesterol, blah, 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 blah. Gung ho day 1, 2 weeks later, the gyms are empty.
Mm-hmm.
Overkill, burnout, pulled the back muscles. Oh, I hurt too much. I can't work out tomorrow. And then it's over. So slow and steady wins the race, not, hot out the gate. So if a truck driver is already making bad choices and they say, okay, I want to start. And you've said, okay, start walking, switch out your Pepsi for Diet Pepsi. What do you think if they start walking? How long should they give it to make it a habit before they add the next thing?
If I was going to coach somebody right now, so say a driver, and I've offered this to people, and I've helped people try to build these habits. There's a great driver I met at a truck stop who did this, and he ended up losing 30 pounds from it. And I should give him a call. Actually, I know he's got another blue collar line of work, but regardless, like, what I would do is, if I was to coach a driver right now and they really want to start and get into it, I'd say, hey, look, you can text me at any time. We're going to talk on the phone once a week. I would say, here's what you need to do for the next 7 days. 5 out of the next 7 days, you need to time out 30 minutes of walking. And I'd also tell them to switch diet. I'd say, let's do it 5 out of the next 7 days. We're going to talk in 7 days, and then you're going to show me what you did. We talk in 7 days, and he did do it 5 out of the next 7 days. I'm going to say, great, let's do it again. If he only does 3 or 4 out of the 7 days, then I'm going to say, great, we're going to do it. Like, I'm going to challenge you to do this again. So that's what I would do. I would do it until he naturally gets 7 out of 7 of those days. And if he gets 7 out of 7 of those days, then I'd say, okay, great. And then we'd probably move on to the next step. You went for 30 minutes, let's go for 40. And then I would, that's the type of baby steps I would do. So I would wait. So normally it'd probably be about 2 weeks. So if out of 14 days, you did 30 minutes of walking for 10, that's a monumental achievement. We have to look at that. And that's how people need to view it. Because you went from 0 minutes a day to where all of a sudden 10 out of 14 is a B plus, A minus. When you think about it, 10 out of 14, you've won the majority of your days. So you went 10 out of 14 days. That's, 30 minutes of walking on 10 days. You times that, that's however many hours you did for something. That's a huge win. So if you're able to get 10 out of 14 days, you've got over the course of those 2 weeks, great. Let's go for 40 minutes now, and you still do it 5 out of 7 days. That means you could fail one day, do it the next day. And if they're not able to do 40 minutes a day for 5 out of the 7 days for 2 weeks, we're going to do it until they finally do
get
it.
it down. Yeah.
Do it until they finally do it. And and I'll text them every day. I'll ask them. I'll be like, "Hey, you walking? What have you?" And that's kind of what I would do. That's the kind of the timeline to work off of setting that goal. Because if I'm going to talk to somebody, especially if they're extremely at risk, I think it's case by case is always different, especially if somebody's coming from zero. But that's what I'd do. I would say, let's make this down. And also I would have them go one step further. I'd say, get a notebook, right? Put Monday, Wednesday, put the 7 days of the week on there. And after you do the 30 minutes, check a box, check Monday, done. And once you do that, and I think that's another incentivized thing. I would say, once you check the box, send me a picture of that check in the box. And if all of a sudden you've checked off 5 of 7, or you checked off 7 of 7, you're going to get a dopamine hit from it. And that's what's going to help you continue to keep going.
So you offer your services to help keep people accountable and provide your personal training services to truck drivers.
Absolutely. I'd love nothing more. I've got a Slack group that I kind of chime into every day with drivers who need it and need help. I left myself wide open. I would love nothing more than for anybody who does want to reach out, be like, "Hey man, I'd really love some help. Can you help me for X amount of time?" I'm kind of chronically online. I have my phone on me, just given the nature of what I do at my full-time job, working at Truck Parking Club. Like, I'm pretty always all around available. And so I have no problems if any driver is like, "I would love for you to coach me and help me run a 5K or do anything or help lose weight." And we can come up with that plan at any point. And I'll do that at no cost. Like, I have no problem.
No cost, drivers.
No cost. I have no problem writing, like, to work with me one-on-one. Here's my number. Let's book a time on the calendar. This is when we're going to meet weekly. This is your plan. You can text me every day. I'm going to start texting you often. I have no problem doing that for anybody. I'd love nothing more than to do that more.
That's awesome. It's so many trainers. So I wanted to do fitness competition. So I have paid for more than my fair share of trainers. And my favorite was an ex-Marine who was just amazing because I need that drill sergeant type personality when I work out. But it's not cheap. I mean, a lot of them charge quite a bit to do that. And you're going to help them do their fitness, their nutrition, and help with the accountability and keep them motivated for nothing, for no charge. That is quite a lot. And do you have very many people hit you up for that?
Not as many as I would like. And there's people who have probably over the past year, who I've given them that stuff and I've followed up with them, and I've gotten ghosted. So it's just like, at a certain point, like, I can only give so much. Like, if I'm texting you every day and I'm saying, "Hey, did you get your steps in?" or "Hey, this," or "Hey, are we going to talk on the phone?" And if I'm getting ghosted, like, I can't make anybody do anything. Like, all I could do is talk to you, try to inspire you, give you the reasons why, on why you should be doing this. And because I'll be like, "Hey, did you get your steps in today?" And they'll be like, "No, I didn't really have time." Let's talk about your day. And it can be very hard. It can be, because it requires being like, where I think, I'm showing this kind of benevolence with, offering to work and coach with people for free. But however, if you're not willing and open to being vulnerable to making mistakes, then it is going to be incredibly difficult. So to work with somebody, or if somebody does want to work with me, they've got to be open to the fact that they're going to mess up. They're going to make some mistakes. It's not going to be perfect. And that's okay, because that's what it's supposed to be. That's what it is for everything. I mean, if we make a mistake at our job, and I say this all the time to people, like, if you make a mistake at your job or you screw something up, you don't quit. Like, say you miss a deadline on something, or like whatever your job is. Like, or say you're late for a delivery trucking, and sometimes I know that can get you fired if it's repeat, but like, say there was there was an accident or something and you were late, you don't quit your job because you were late. If you get a flat tire, you don't sell your car. Like, we don't do these things the same way. And I almost use this reference too. Like, if we're going to go on vacation, like, say you're going to take a vacation this year, everybody loves a vacation. You're going to spend weeks planning that, where to go, what's the best flights, what's the best hotel, what's the best beach in the area, what's the best restaurants. People will spend all this time researching that. They'll spend all this time and weeks planning for what could either be a weekend, like a long weekend, or 1 week. And so same kind of mindset. If you're going to take all that time to plan this vacation that you might only be spending 3 to 5 days doing, you could take the 10 minutes to talk to a guy like me on the phone, or the 1 hour to kind of map out what your week's going to look like and where you're going to fit the exercise in, where you're going to fit, where you're going to stop at your truck stops. Like we will spend all this time planning for these other things, but when it comes to this one thing, it always seems to get kicked on the back burner. And which I was going to close with kind of like my philosophy of why that is. And it just has everything to do with education, which is why I think doing this podcast is important, and why at the new driver level, this needs to be driven home.
Yep. And that's right. And I think that them kind of pulling back has more to do with the mental health aspect of it, which we're not going to cover today, but that ties into it, because once they disappoint themselves and then they're disappointing somebody else, then they retreat inward, which is also has its own effects. But what we're going to do now is you're going to do some live demonstrations for some exercises that people can do in the truck or on the road. And I'm going to play with this thing and make you bigger. Let's see. I want to make you bigger, not me bigger. Let's see here. There, let's see. Oh, they won't let me pull back. It just doesn't give me enough options here.
Whatever you want to do.
I want you to be the big box, not me be the bug box. All right. So if you would demonstrate a few things. Now, I always took a jump rope with me. There's plenty of videos out there where drivers are like, look at her, she's jump roping at the shipper. But you're more of a runner and a high energy athlete than I am. So what do you got for us?
Well, yeah, I think one of the most important exercises somebody can do, and I'm actually going to flip my camera too, so that way I can that way we can figure this out. So take me off screen, so that way we can get like a full body thing. I want to be in a position where you can kind of see my legs, at least. I know if you want to.
Woohoo!
How's that?
The muscle, them triathlon legs, runner legs.
Yeah,
I'm a weightlifter. See, I'm not a cardio girl. I'm more of a. My trainer used to always tell me he could throw weights at me all day long, and I'd take it. The minute he give me cardio, I'd crash.
All right, second, sweet. All right, perfect. So you can kind of see my legs in this. I'll move it back a little bit further. So one of the best exercises, especially for your spine, would be to squat. Now, what's tough about squatting is proper form. So a lot of times when people will squat, they'll lead with their knees. They'll kind of like and actually I can move my camera back a little bit further. And for
people who can't go all the way down, if you just go a little bit to get used to it, find your resistance.
You find your balance, and what's great.
Yeah.
So a lot of times when people squat, they'll be trying to go straight down. They lead with their knees and they're on their toes. And when you do this, it can become very painful. And if people try to do that, so if you're going forward, kind of down here, you're putting a lot of pressure on your knees. And so when you think of squatting, and this is good for your spine too, is if you think about putting the weight back in your heels, and if you watch, I'm going to stick my butt out, and you're putting the weight in your heels. And as you come down, you're going to drop it straight down. You're going to feel it right back here. And then, getting your thighs parallel to the deck are like always the most important. But with me, you can't see it, but my toes are up because the weight's in my heels, and you come straight back up. What you're doing is you're working your glutes, your glutes and your hamstrings, which are parts of your body from the sitting that are becoming weaker from the amount of sitting. They're relaxed. Right. There's pressure on them. So just that squat, and a great way, and holding your arms out is a great way to help you keep balance. If you're somebody who can't go all the way down, great key here is if you have some TRX straps, you could. But even so, say you have a flatbed trailer, you could be on the side of your trailer and hold it as you're dropping yourself down, but going as low as you can go. So if here is the only as low as you can go, that's fine. That's perfectly okay. You can do that. Squatting is, I'd say, the one of the number one things you can do. Number two, another one which gets the Opposite side of the leg too, like the front part of the quad would be a lunge. And coming back on a lunge is you sticking your leg down, dropping your leg back, and coming straight up. That, like those ones right there, just for your spinal movement, I'd say reverse lunges are number one. Another good one too, especially just for movement, especially for walking. Say there's snow on the ground, you really can't walk. Using the steps of your cab to simply step up on the steps and stepping back down. Like those are key. Calf raises are big ones too. And you can have your toes on the step of your tractor and just coming up and doing calf raises. Even if you're doing them from the floor, say you can't balance.
I never thought about that.
So yeah, say you can't balance on the step, or say it's too hard, just doing them from the floor, doing a few of those calf raises right there, what it's going to do for your calf muscles that have been disengaged all day are pretty massive. Another huge one, and I'm actually going to drop my tripod to show it because I think it makes sense. Because say any of these movements are very hard, or whatever they could be. Again, I know this isn't. I wonder how this looks now. Okay, it's lower.
There you go.
So, which again for that squat, and I've got all this stuff in my room. Oh, so you can see my feet now too. So notice my toes, weight back in my heels. There's that squat. You go all the way down. You're driving yourself back up. You're thinking straight back. My toes are up. The weight's in the heels. This is where you go all the way down. Same thing with that reverse lunge. As you come down, you kind of lean forward. One leg's down. Your knee doesn't even need to touch the ground, and you're coming back up. There's your toe raises. Another great one. Like I was saying, this is just for your lower back in general, which is just, I think this is super necessary, especially for anybody with lower back pain. It's called cat-cow. It's a yoga thing. You can do this on your bunk. You can do this on your bunk. You can do this in between your seats. You can do it on your top bunk if you need to, depending on space. But it's getting into tabletop, so you're on all fours. And this one right here, this one's really huge, is where you round out your back right here.
Yep. That feels good too.
You arch it, and then you round it back out. So this one, like this one's a really huge one, because a lot of times drivers suffer from sciatic pain, that pain that can shoot down your legs. What that's coming from is either a bulging disc. It's coming from spinal degeneration, which is weakness is happening, and kind of discs that are out of place, whether there's a slight herniation or a slight bulge, and it's hitting into a nerve. And so when you're doing that, when you do that cat-cow exercise, what you're doing is you're putting it back in, like you're exercising it to put it back in place, like as you bend it. And if you do that over time, and I'm not sure, and if you're a driver who's ever had an injury, like say you've hurt your shoulder or something, like sports injury from high school, you've gone to physical therapy, it's a lot of like small, tedious work. That's what that is. So doing that cat-cow is a huge one for your spine, especially for longevity. We're talking, because if this is going to be your career, if you know that this is going to be the next 5, 10, 15 years of what you're going to be doing, you don't want to have to you don't want to be in pain to do that job. That's a huge one right there. I'd say the next biggest thing which is the world favorite, is doing push-ups. Now, the best part about doing push-ups, if you're somebody who can't do a regular one, and I don't know if you can still see me. You can still see me, right?
Yep.
So if you can't go all the way down and back up, like from there, you should do that push-up from the knee. And a great thing to do to take care of your shoulders is have the hands underneath the chest. So my hands aren't way out in front of me. They're not way out to the side. You want the hands in line with the chest, and you're on your knees, and you go all the way down and back up. If you cannot do the push-ups from your knee, what you can do, and this is especially important, is if you're outside, you're on your tractor, you can get a yoga mat or something to kneel on to take care of your knees. You can put your hands on the steps.
Yes, that's what I do. I do mine off the steps.
And there it is. That is the most dialed back version, and you should be able to go all the way down and back up. What that's especially good for,
a lot of people are going to be like, I don't want to get down on the ground at a truck stop, because we all know what the ground is like at a truck stop. So,
and you can do it inside your cab too. If you set yourself back from your, if you say the bunk is right in front of me right here, if I'm staring at my bed, you can put your hands on the bed, which is, probably right here, and you can do it down that way. Those are great keys. Other ones. So, I mean, especially if you're looking to level up, I carried a kettlebell with me on the road. And so just like with that squat, you can start weighting your squats. So just holding it up here, back down. You can do the same thing with those reverse lunges. As you come down, this one's it's going to help you build some more muscle, work them to fatigue. Kettlebell swing. Great one.
And all these exercises can be done outside or in your truck. There's plenty of room in your truck for this exercise.
Plenty of room. Yeah. And this one, again, for your back, your glutes, your hips, like, because we're talking about movements that are great for your longevity. This one, your back, your glutes, your hips, because you're letting your torso fall, and you explode through your hips to pop it straight up about shoulder and chest height and back down. That's what it's working all down there. And again, same way, you can use this kettlebell for multiple things, little shoulder presses as you come all the way up and down. Another great exercise too, that's important, especially because when we're talking driving, it really is all about the lower back, the glutes, and the hamstrings, is just the idea. So say you have this kettlebell and you're outside of your truck, you've got the steps up onto the cab, holding onto a weight and placing your foot up here and doing a lateral step up. So if there was if only I had a boxer, actually, I've got this thing right here.
We need to get you the side of a semi.
Yeah, I know. So this right here. So say I'm on, say this is your step, just going like this, just this. You do 10 on each side. You do 10 on the right, 10 on the left. You do 3 sets of that. Just this right here will keep this, the side of your glute strong. Like that, those are huge. And those are also workouts for life. Like if you're doing it, and you could just do it regular straight up. You can, if you have a flatbed truck, so you're grabbing a weight, you step up onto it, you step back down. That right there is you when you're 65, 75 years old. That's you going to carrying your groceries up the stairs. So you carrying your grandchild up the stairs. Like all of those are very functional movements.
Those are all good, very good movements that you can do on the road.
100%.
Awesome. Thank you for the demonstration. Because most people don't think about what they can do in the restrictions of the space.
And I'm always here. And that's another thing I'm here for 100%. Whereas if anybody wants help or needs help with form and form correction and something's hurting or anything like that, like I'm down to talk to anybody. I've got a plethora of YouTube videos about form or good exercises, what they've got, especially if they do have lower back issues or if they do have sciatica. I'm at least, if I don't have the answer straight up, I'm at least connected with enough people to find it.
Yeah. Any thing that I did not ask or go over that you want to touch base on before we sign off today?
Absolutely. I mean, what I like to lead people off with is, is the why. Like, so like I said earlier that there's a million why nots. There's one why. Finding your why is really important, and your why is different for everybody. My why I continue to keep doing what I'm doing is, at this point, it's continue. It has everything to do with, leading by example, but really overall has to do with honoring my family. And I think a lot of people's whys is their family. Like I do what I do and compete and, go on shows and, still work in this industry and work at Truck Parking Club. Like everything part of my life now has everything to do with my last name and really honoring it the same way that my family built it to be up at one time. And so that's really huge for me. And when it comes to finding your why, and if you can lean on that with whatever it is, especially when it comes to making these different choices and lifestyle choices, that's going to help you. I normally start off, whenever I speak at like an event about this, I'll always ask people a question about I'll ask them what they think the number one reason is for obesity, just in general. I'll be like, hey, I'll ask a crowd, what do you think your number one reason for obesity? And they'll list things that cause it. They'll say, oh, sedentary lifestyle, not good food, lack of exercise. That all causes it. But the reason why those, like, we know that that's what causes it, but the reason why those cause it has everything to do with education. And I kind of add a little joke to it. I'll ask the crowd, I'll be like, did anybody wake up and smoke crack? Like, did any of you guys wake up and do that? And, people will laugh and be like, oh, of course not. And the reason why nobody woke up to smoke crack is because we're very well educated on the dangers of what using crack looks like. And we're not as educated about what the dangers of an unhealthy lifestyle do, and how, and the reality is that, when it comes to chronic disease and obesity, it is not an acute issue. It doesn't happen very quickly. With crack, if you smoke it once, you can die or go to jail or worse, or, there's things that will happen to you very quickly. However, with health and lifestyle choices, it will happen to you quicker. It will happen to you younger, but you don't see it happen. You don't see that negativity happen to you right then and there when you do it. But what it does lead to is an average life expectancy of 61. What it does lead to is all these chronic diseases that can lead to cancer and all that. And so it's the education piece that matters the most. And for anybody out there who really needs to have this point driven home, and I mentioned this earlier, again, you can get away with kind of, and I also want to go back just one step further. This isn't about perfection. So about almost 2 years ago, I haven't touched alcohol since, but that's just because of the road I've been on. And at this point, it doesn't suit my lifestyle. I don't tell anybody to give up anything. I've never given up Terry Black's barbecue. I've never given up pizza. I've never given up ice cream. I've never given up, I didn't give up Thanksgiving or dessert. None of that has been given up. I participated and have fun and all of that. That's not what this is all about. That's not the message I preach at all. But there's time and a place. It's about those habits. And the reality is if you don't, is if you again, you can get away with this in your 20s, your 30s, into your 40s. You can get away with this and be fine. But on a long enough timeline, when you need it the most, when you're in the twilight of your career, going into your 40s, going into your 50s, if you suffer, you're putting your career at risk, because if you have one of these chronic diseases that leads to an event, if you lose your DOT medical card, if you've been driving for 20 years, you can't retire yet. So if you've been driving for 20 years and you have a heart attack or a stroke, or especially a stroke, you lose that DOT medical card. There's your job right there. There's your, and I'm not saying you can't get another job, but what does that look like for you? Are you ready to make that decision now? And so if it's catching up to you in the twilight of your career, a lot of drivers say this a lot. I mean, people work in this industry and people work as drivers because they need to earn an income and they want to provide for their family. And a lot of drivers, and a lot of conversations I have, and people say this a lot, is I'll do anything for my family. I would give anything for my family. I would die for my family. Nobody is asking you to do that, but can you just live for your family? That's the most important part. And I think that when we get back to that, the idea of, because I can tell you firsthand, especially watching how my grandfather passed away, that's not how I want to go out. That's not how if you have a son or daughter, you don't want them to do it. When it comes to your autonomy, we have to think about this in the terms of freedom. And this is something everybody can understand. We very much value freedom in the United States. People do. And and if you had an injury, you've experienced this, but nobody ever wants to have somebody, you don't want to have to rely on anybody for something. Like, say you break your leg. Like, I don't know if you've ever broken a leg or a bone in like elementary school. No. Some kids got to carry your books, or like somebody's on crutch. Like, just being on crutches when you're limited, the idea of being able to reach above your head, bend over and pick something up, like pick those things. Those are things we take for granted every single day. And when you live with chronic disease, if you're in your 50s or 60s, and you have something happen to you, whether you have to lose a limb or something for diabetes and you need help, nobody wants that. Nobody ever wants to do that. You would never want to. And if you have a family, do you want them do you want to force them to have to abandon their life and what they need to do to take care of you, to take you to the doctor's appointments, to do these things that were very much preventable, like living with chronic disease? Like, so if you're, because, do you want to be that person who's 65, who has to spend the last 15 years of their life surviving, or would you rather be thriving? Do you want your kids to have to take you to the doctor because you can't drive and do XYZ? Nobody wants that. Losing your freedom is like everybody's nightmare. Like, people say all the time, oh, if I'm on life, people will say, if they're in a hospital and they're, or what have you, something has happened to them, they'd be like, I don't want to make my family have to suffer. Like, that's something people always say. You have a choice, balls in your court, to be able to prevent some of those things. And all it requires you doing is quite literally just moving a little bit more and eating less. Like, when we really zoom out at this, the idea of weight loss isn't hard. It's just the time piece. And I think when we get down to the educational level, and when we look at it as taking care of yourself isn't just taking care of yourself, you're taking care of the ones around you the most. Like, when you're able to do these things and just live a little bit better of a lifestyle, you're serving your family. You're serving you're serving your family the best gift you can give them, which is the healthiest and best version of you.
Yep. And your body's your temple, right? It is the most important freight that you're going to haul. So protect it.
100%. Yeah. Take care of yourself the best way you can. Uh, it's tough. It's a hard time for people right now. It's hard to get motivated. It's hard to stay motivated, which is also why, and I know we're running on time. Community is very important. Who you're talking to, who you're associating with, what kind of social media you're consuming, all matters especially with the mental health stuff too. All very much matters. If you're in a group of 5 people who are saying, "I'll never lose weight. I can't. I'll fail. I'm not cut out for it." You're going to end up thinking that way.
Absolutely.
I am so passionate about this industry because as I've gotten into it, I'm connected with people such as yourself, the people we talk to on LinkedIn. The community is everything. It's the old saying: you hang out with 5 millionaires, you'll probably be the 6th. You hang out with 5 drug addicts or whatever. It's how you like. We truly are products of our environment in every sense of every sense of the way. And finding your tribe and your community is huge, and finding those like-minded individuals will have a major impact, which is why I have the Slack group. That's why I'll coach people for free, because if I'm your friend overall, like the people I'm friends with, the reason why I'm doing, Ironman and trying to compete at this level and become a faster marathoner is because that's who I'm hanging out with. Like I'm hanging out with people who are all doing that, and I'm seeing them do it. So I want to do it. And so if your main line of friendship is with people who are leveling up and doing that thing, you're going to follow them. If you're with people who are just, who love being at the bottom and complain all the time, that's what you're going to do. So community is everything. And again, you're right. Your body's your temple. Do it not just for yourself, but do it for your family.
That's it. All right, everybody. That is a wrap on our very first Training Tuesday here on Trucking with Tammy. Big thank you to Michael Anthony Lombard for all his wisdom. And remember, this isn't about becoming a triathlete overnight. This is one better choice today, right? For your body, your energy, and for your trucking career. So today's episode fired you up. Michael Anthony, he volunteered to be your coach. He volunteered to help you out free of charge. Look him up. Thanks for being with us today. This is Tammy. Keep the shiny side up and rubber side down. Later, guys.